Boy in Green. Chapter 7. Peter found himself flying with Zelilia's hand in his. His Pegasus flew next to them in case he got tired. Tink rested on top of the Pegasus's head because she was exhausted from the late night they had. Plus, being constantly jealous didn't help either. By this time, she had given up on trying to separate Peter from Miss Princess Perfect. "I can't believe you can fly," Zelilia shouted through the wind. Peter smirked. "What do you mean?" "We're both flying." Zelilia rolled her eyes but laughed all the same, "Only because of you." They smiled at each other, and Tink secretly gagged. Then as they passed by a cloud, Zelilia ran her fingers through it. Tink, fed up with the romantic atmosphere, drank some water, and then spit it at the princess. Zelilia laughed as the water hit her cheek. "Oh, Tink. You sure like to have fun, don't you?" Tink glared at the girl, realizing that there was nothing to be done. She supposed Zelilia was a better option than those mermaids. This princess is the only reason why Tink even got to meet Peter in the first place. Peter pointed to the island in front of them. "There it is. Now, all we have to do is wait until it's dark out. That should be a couple of hours from now. Which means we can find something to eat. Remember to use the name Wendy. By this time, there are sure to be people searching for me." They landed on the island with a small house in front of them and a stone path. Together, they walked down the path that led to the rest of the town. From there, they found a place to eat. Using the gold coins Zelilia gave him, Peter bought them a decent meal and one for the road. Not willing to miss the beam of light, they took their food to where the sun of the sky was claimed to be seen. They sat right at the edge of the island, feet dangling and kicking clouds. The action was something most people avoided doing, including fairies, but again, they wanted to make sure they were right at the edge where others claimed to have seen the sun of the sky. They weren't going to miss it. As the real sun sank out of sight, they kept a lookout for the glowing light. Soon, around 10 o'clock, Zelilia's head drooped. Peter caught her head and rested it on his shoulder as he continued to skim the clouds. Just as his eyes felt heavy, raindrops kissed his face. Then, in the distance, he saw a bright glowing light. He shook Zelilia awake. Her eyes opened slowly before they expanded when she spotted the light. She hopped to her feet and climbed on Zel. Peter mirrored her movements and got on behind her. He took the reins, putting his arms around Zelilia. They zoomed toward the light. Tink held on for dear life as they plummeted to the bright glow. She shouldn't have sat in the front. "Wahoo!" Peter cried as they got closer to the light, his hat whipping in the wind. Zelilia and Tink on the other hand screamed in fright at the speed. The girls wondered how Peter could see what he was doing when the rain violently pierced their eyes. The light had turned into a blur and then began to sway. "Peter, the light is moving!" Zelilia shouted over the storm around them. "What?" he yelled back, unable to hear her. Zelilia repeated herself, but Peter still couldn't hear what she said. Tink bravely let go of the Pegasus's mane and quickly gripped Peter's sleeve. In his ear, she shouted what Zelilia said. Peter blinked the rain out of his eyes and saw they were right. The light was moving and the wind and rain seemed to circle around it too. He recalled the power dragons had if they combined their abilities. Perhaps this rainstorm was where they hid. It made perfect sense because no one had explored this area of the sky. That could also mean this was where Captain Hook hid as well. "I think we've found Captain Hook's base," Peter shouted as a curved island emerged from the thick clouds. The source of the glowing light was a water dragon. On the island they were approaching, they could make out the shapes of large mountains and additional dragons. Dragons that only existed in legends, and when Peter witnessed the red-violet eyes of a blackthorn, he shivered. "Should we go back?" Zelilia asked. Peter thought about it before he said confidently, "No, he has the rest of the pixies somewhere. We need to get them back to the tree." "All right, but we can't just barge in like this. He has sucked the magic out of fairies and has killed more than half of our kind in just a year with his dragons. My father has been looking for him since he tried taking Terranil Castle. That's why we have to do this." Peter looked at Tink. "Get in my hat. They might see your glow." Tink made no question as she slipped inside his hat. From there, they avoided the water dragon and got closer to the island. It was good that Peter's Pegasus had grown stronger over the year and a half, and that Peter was given power over the wind. Otherwise, they would have been like any other fairy or elf that tried to see what the glowing light was, dragon food. Keeping in the clouds, Peter found the boat that rested on the back of the unseen dragon. The dragon itself was sleeping, which was beneficial for them. On the ship though, Hook's men were circling around the mast. As they got closer, Peter realized Princess Tiger Lily was once again tied to the mast. Hook just couldn't give her up, could he? He must be after her stone, the Star of the Sea. That means he didn't know Peter took it. "Oh, poor thing," Zalilia sighed. "She's a mermaid. I saved her before from Hook, but it looks like he found her again. Perhaps the Creator guided us here after all, but Peter, how are we going to save her without being spotted?" Peter located a hiding spot under the mainland of the island. He landed his Pegasus there. They slipped off, and Peter used the wind to fly. He was about to soar up to save Tiger Lily, but Zalilia caught his hand. "Wait, Peter, what are you going to do? If I don't come back, fly away and tell your father what happened. That way it doesn't remain a mystery to where Captain Hook is hiding." For the first time since he met her, she cried, breaking her positive attitude, "No. I won't let you go alone. There has to be a way to save her and the pixies without recklessly charging in." Peter touched the ground again and said to her, "There are hundreds of dragons up there and just as many men. No matter how sneaky I try to be, they'll catch me eventually." Her eyes looked starry. "Peter, we hardly know each other, but you're the only person who believed me. You don't know how much I've worried about you, and I thought I sent you on a suicide mission." Peter smiled and hugged her tightly. "Then continue to believe in me. I'll be back." Then he flew away, only to return with Tink in his hands. He handed the feisty pixie over to Zalilia. When he went out of sight for a second time, Tinker Bell and Zalilia looked at one another. All prayers reached out to Peter. Then the two girls planned what they would do if things went south. They couldn't leave him there, but they surely needed to warn someone about what the light really was. Peter successfully made it to the ship without being seen, and he knew exactly where Hook was hiding the rest of the pixies. The pirates could do nothing to hide the pixies' glow from the windows of the lower deck. His first goal would be to save them since he certainly would be discovered once he went after Tiger Lily. Carefully, Peter slipped into the lower decks when all the men were focused on Tiger Lily. From there he followed the pixies' light. He spotted them in a cage much like the one they were in before. Peter pulled off his hat and whispered to the group of pixies, "Get inside my hat and stay there. Once we get back outside, I'll fly you to Zalilia." He opened the cage and the pixies piled in the green fabric, then Peter put the hat on his head. From there, Peter tiptoed around until he was on the main deck. Quickly, he had the wind fly him to where Zalilia hid. He found her talking to Tink, and the girls both gasped when they saw him. They hugged him tightly, thinking his task was completed. Wait, I'm not done yet." Peter took off his hat and the pixies scrambled out of the tight space. However, Peter instructed them to get in the satchel that Evan normally rode in. He didn't want their brightness to be spotted by Hook's men. "You mean you're going back?" Tink shouted at Peter. Peter nodded, "Yes, for Tiger Lily, but I have a plan." Peter took the harp from one of the other bags on his Pegasus's saddle. "Cecilia, go ahead and fly the pixies out of here." She agreed to do it, but she didn't seem to like leaving him behind. And she didn't. However, she and Tink already formed a solid plan while Peter was gone. For the second time, Peter left them. With the harp in his hands, he landed at the top of the mast where the men failed to keep a lookout. They probably thought no one would ever make it to the island before falling to their deaths in the storm. Breathing a deep breath, Peter began to play the harp. It didn't take long until the men below heard its tune. They glanced around bewildered as they wondered where the sound came from. Smee looked at Tiger Lily with an eyebrow raised. "Is this a mermaid trick?" Tiger Lily, who had a gag over her mouth, rolled her eyes. The only way she could trick them was if she was singing. However, she played along and nodded. "Men, cover your ears, she's going to turn us against each other," Smee shouted to the crew. "She has to be singing to do that," one of the brighter men said. "No, now cover your ears. That's just what they want you to believe." "I don't think so." "Look, she's turning you against me," Smee proclaimed as Peter intensified his song. The two began to fight, then others joined in as well. Peter slowly lowered himself down to where Tiger Lily was at. While the crew was making a racket with their swords, Peter removed the gag from Tiger Lily's face. "Peter," she said with a grin. Peter put a finger to his lips, then said, "Start singing." Tiger Lily nodded, and she picked up Peter's song from where he left off. When she ordered one of the men to cut her loose, they did just that. She started to fall, but behind the mast, Peter caught her before she flopped to the deck. Once she told the men to forget Peter being here, Peter flew her away, just as Hook came out of his cabin to see what was going on. Hook caught a glance of Peter flying off with Tiger Lily. Instead of yelling at his men, he ordered one of the smaller dragons on the island to give him a lift. He wasn't going to let Peter get away so easily. It was insulting when Peter chopped off his hand the last time, giving Hook a reason to be called such as he had since attached a hook to his arm. With his dragon, Hook raced after them through the storm. Peter glanced back and saw him chasing after them. Doubt circled in Peter's mind if he and Tiger Lily would make it. After a while, Hook reached them. His dragon's wings proved to be much stronger than Zell's feathered ones. "Give up, boy. I'll give you one last chance to live and become one of us. Don't be fooled by your girlfriend. I already know what you have done to my people. You won't get youth by killing the elves." Hook smiled wickedly. "There's only one way to find out." The captain took out his new sword and swung it at Peter, but then Team Zelilia got in the way. Zelilia rode on Zell, the mighty Pegasus. The Pegasus kicked at Hook and the dragon he was on. Hook's sword fell out of his hands, lost in the clouds where it would end up in the Sea of Baldwin. Peter used his sword and sliced at Hook's cheek, causing the man to lose all focus and fall off his dragon. "Get on!" Zelilia shouted out above the storm. Peter hopped on, still holding Tiger Lily. "Where's Tink?" She led the way out with the rest of the pixies. "She's smarter than she looks." Tink came up with the plan of flying down to the other worlds where the storm isn't as bad. Zelilia glanced at them with a smile. "Get ready to freefall for a bit." "What?" Tiger Lily exclaimed as Zell stopped flapping her wings and dove down head first. This time Zelilia cheered with Peter as Tiger Lily screamed. The mermaid clung to Peter as they dropped lower and lower, passing through the dark clouds that soaked them with water. Not that it was a problem for Tiger Lily. She just didn't like flying or falling. It wasn't something a mermaid experienced often. They broke through the final clouds and came out to see the sun poking above the beautiful sea. The Pegasus flapped her wings again as she pulled up. Her hooves ran along the water of the sea until they found a small island. Zelilia got off first, her hair in disarray. Peter followed her with Tiger Lily in his arms. They walked into the water, and Peter set Tiger Lily down in the ocean gently. She was pleased to be in the ocean again and not flying about in the air. "Thank you for saving me again, Peter. Remember what I said about that stone? If you don't return it soon, you'll have to be my husband." What? I didn't agree to that," Peter said, but he still blushed. Celilia giggled, taking Tiger Lily's comment as a joke, but then the mermaid princess faced her and asked, "What's so funny?" "I'm not kidding, fairy girl. Do you think you're better than me? You're not joking?" Celilia asked, taking this another way now. A strong pull of jealousy tugged at her heart. "Not at all, fairy girl. Goodness, you're worse than human girls. I'm not a fairy. Don't lie to a princess." Tiger Lily shouted as she grabbed a hold of Celilia's blue nightgown, practically trying to drown her. Peter got between them as Celilia was ready to kick Tiger Lily in the face. "Hey, stop fighting. Let's not go down that path. I promise I'll return the stone to you." Tiger Lily huffed, "Fine, but don't bring her with you when you visit." "Her name is Wendy," Peter said, remembering what Celilia told him about using her real name, and though he thought he could trust Tiger Lily, he wasn't sure now. "Wendy, Wendy, the awful fairy girl," Tiger Lily muttered as she swam away, then she shouted to Celilia, "Thanks for dropping me off far from home. Now I have time to think of all the rumors to spread about you fairy girls." She dipped down, fully in the water, letting her tail splash some water at Celilia. When Tiger Lily was out of sight, Celilia sighed, "I thought she would make a great friend outside of our world, but I guess I ruined that." "Don't worry about it, she's just in a mood," Peter said, going back to his Pegasus and hopping on. He outstretched his hand to Celilia and lifted her on the Pegasus. "Oh, and thanks for what you did back there." "Sure thing. It's what you would have done." Peter didn't know how to take the compliment, so he directed her attention to the task at hand. "So, I guess we have to go to Dark Island after all." They flew off and went back up to Terranil. "It appears to be that way," Celilia said sadly. "I hope Tink warned my father or the boys about Hook. I'm sure they at least made it back to the tree." "I bet they did. I know they did. Now, what direction is the island?" "From here, east." Peter steered his Pegasus east, then he asked, "So, were you being truthful about wanting to care for us lost boys?" Celilia's eyes sparkled, "Yes. I would rather protect the tree with you than fulfill my place on a throne. And I don't think the one I love would want to be a king all of his life." "You love someone?" Peter asked, trying to picture Celilia married, but he couldn't do it. "Peter, do you know what love is?" "Not really." "Do you know what a kiss is?" "I think so." She hummed, "What about a thimble?" "Huh," he said, turning his head to look at her, "what does a thimble have to do with?" Her lips pressed against his in a quick fashion, but it was enough to flush his cheeks. Peter's insides flew around like pixies were stuck in there, trying to get out. It was a strange and welcoming feeling that left him in a daze. Celilia smiled at his reaction. "That was a kiss." Peter stammered out, I know that." He faced forward again and smiled to himself bashfully. He could still feel the softness of her lips. Suddenly the warmth that lingered on his lips receded. He stared at the rather haunting island before him. For the most part, it was all forest on the island, a dead and beaten one. And though the sun was high in the sky, just around this island, it was extremely dark. Celilia's arms around him tightened as she looked upon the island as well. Bravely, Peter landed them down on it. Carefully, he tied his Pegasus to a tree so Zelle wouldn't fly off without them, but then he worried about some roaming prisoners stealing her. He ended up taking her with them. As they crept through the eerie forest where fog appeared as ghosts, Peter asked Cecilia in a hushed voice, "Is there a specific place where the son of the sky is supposed to be? I think I read somewhere that its location may be in a cave. Apparently, there's lots of treasure inside, but its exact location here isn't well known, but in my free time I've looked into it more and all I got was that it's in the belly of the beast. So somewhere around the middle of the island? Perhaps that's where all the bleeding Malsons hang out. I guess that could be it." They continued through the dark forest, the trees gaining more and more leaves, but they weren't a regular forest green like the clothes and hat Peter wore. Celilia's blue dress and the bright feather on Peter's hat were the most vibrant colors on the whole island. "What do you know about bleeding Malsons?" Peter asked, his voice becoming even quieter. "I know they can form together to create unspeakable things and that they can appear as any creature. There's also a myth that a skilled person can forcibly change their appearance as well, but only if that person can withstand fear. The bleeding Malsons thrive on fear and nightmares." Peter shivered as he thought of the words, bleeding nightmares. Seeing all of the Aubryns dead was already a frightful image in his mind, and he didn't want to see anything else like that or like the dragons on Dark Island. There was a loud snap by a bush, sending Peter's skin crawling, but then Cecilia took his hand. He glanced at her and saw she was smiling, though her eyes said otherwise. He lifted his chin up and they continued to walk, ignoring the sounds since it would only lead them to trouble. They kept a watchful eye out, along with listening ears. Snap, snap, snap. It kept going, one after the other. The sound always came from their left side by a tree or bush. They saw no one, so they moved along. It happened once again. Peter couldn't take it anymore as he pulled his sword out and headed to the new bush where the sound came from. He pointed the tip of the sword at the large bush and said boldly, "Who are you? Why are you following us?" "Please don't kill me," a deep voice sobbed. "Just come out and tell us what you're doing," Peter said, holding the sword to his side. A fairly large head poked out of the top of the bush, then it rose higher and higher until the person's head was 10 feet above Peter's. It was unmistakably a troll, a very rare male creature to be born. The female version of a troll was a giant. In their species, the females were the physically stronger ones. "Don't kill me, please. I'm not even a prisoner here," the troll said. "He could be lying to us," Cecilia said. "Trolls and giants alike have a tendency to eat fairies. I'm sure they won't pass up on elves." Peter and Cecilia started to walk away, keeping a close eye on the troll. "Wait," he shouted, "aren't you treasure hunters? I know where it is." "He still could be lying," Cecilia whispered. Peter sighed, "But we have no clue where to look for a cave here." The troll clumped forward. "I know what you're talking about. Please let me join you. I can help." Cecilia looked at the troll with wary eyes. "If you know where it is, then why would you need our help so badly?" "I can't get in. I've been trying for weeks to get past the door, but nothing works. So when I saw you, I thought perhaps you could help me. I promise you'll get first dibs on whatever is in there." Now that they could see the troll's feet, Cecilia stared at the broken chains around his ankles. "You already lied to us. You are a prisoner here." The troll followed her gaze down to his feet, saying nothing. "If you lead us there, and we open the door, what is to stop you from eating us afterward?" Peter asked the troll. "You could get me off this island with my treasure," the troll responded. "I would never eat you if you promised me that." Cecilia's eyes narrowed as she shook her head. Peter twisted his mouth and for a brief moment thought about it. Finally, he said, "All right. Fine. Take us to it." The troll grinned and hopped through the forest, his big feet shaking the ground around them. Cecilia and Peter followed behind him with Peter's Pegasus still with them. They traveled for a while until they came across a ditch. The troll easily went down it. Peter flew himself and Zalilia inside, and the Pegasus followed after, not willing to stay up there alone. In the ditch was a cave. The troll entered it, and they continued to follow the creature. Inside the cave was a home of bats, but then the group reached a wall different from the others. It was carved into and 2 torches were lit on the wall. Zalilia stepped forward and traced the writing. She read it aloud for them. Only with the son of the sky can one enter where the riches are buried. Tune and rhyme from the shining jewel will light the path. What? But I thought the son of the sky was inside the cave, Peter said. So you can't open it either? The troll asked, full of anguish. Zalilia sighed regretfully as she placed her head and right hand on the wall. All of this for nothing. Is it really sitting somewhere by the tree? Then she noticed more words written on the wall. It was the same words as the well-known lullaby Zalilia sang to the boys. The sun paves the road for the lost and outcast, she sang to herself in a disappointed tone. She hoped it would be something more helpful than that. Then, gold light shined beneath her hand resting on the wall. She pulled her hand back as the gold light expanded. Soon it covered the whole cave and the light flashed once and the wall disappeared in front of their eyes. In its place stood stacks of gold, diamonds, and gems. The troll went in gleefully and searched through the riches. He placed a small crown on his head while shoving things down in his pockets. Zalilia and Peter remained where they were. Zalilia peered down at her palm, which magically contained a small sun-shaped jewel. Then she said quietly, "I'm the sun in the sky." She turned to Peter and smiled. To open it up, I had to sing. The sun is in our hearts and we can reach out to the lost just like in the song. That's why it was written on the wall. You know what else it opened up? Peter asked. What? The brightness in your smile. Zalilia cracked a grin, still cupping the jewel in her hand. You are a dork. Peter cleared his throat, unsure if that was a good thing. I say it's about time we go then. The tree will want to be healed. Zalilia handed the jewel to Peter for safekeeping, but the troll noticed their departure as they tried to leave. Hey, what about your promise? Peter looked at the big guy. Oh right, do you have everything you want? The troll put some more things in his pocket and then came out of the room. After that, he found a boulder and moved it in front of the room of riches. He clearly didn't want anyone to find it. Grinning, he lifted a beautiful egg with flecks of gold on its coating. Let's go, he shouted, kissing the top of the egg. They made their way out of the cave and back into the forest. That was when they came across some animals surrounding the cave. All of the animals appeared normal enough to be in the forest until they spotted 2 of them that looked very out of place. Bleeding mousens, Zalilia whispered, staring directly at the odd seal and dolphin. The troll, who had enough of these ugly creatures, swatted at the seal. All the cute animals changed into disgusting creatures whose skin rotted. Though, it was more like they didn't have any skin, just pulsing muscles and bones that twisted. As the troll batted them away, Peter grabbed onto Zalilia and flew to the sky. A bleeding mousen caught Zalilia's leg and its long nails scratched her through her dress and blood ran along her leg. She screamed from the pain but kicked the creature off with her other leg. Get on my Pegasus! Peter screamed at the troll. Can she hold his weight with all that gold? Zalilia asked as she watched Peter's Pegasus try to get higher off the ground with no success. It didn't help that the troll's chains forced him to sit side saddle. Drop your gold, Peter instructed. The troll hesitated, but Peter yelled at him again, drop it. It's you or your life. Reluctantly and mournfully, the troll tossed everything, besides his golden egg. To his abandoned gold and diamonds, he said, I'll come back for you. Speedily, the group flew off and away from the dreaded island. From there, they traveled quickly to Beckham, a group of farming islands. The distance was almost too much for Zell as the poor Pegasus carried the heavy troll and his egg. The greedy fool should have dropped that too, as the egg's weight wasn't light. As soon as they touched the ground, Peter ordered the troll to get off Zell. The troll did, and the Pegasus crashed into the dirt. Peter got out an apple they had bought and fed it to her while stroking her head. The troll stared at them while Zelilia walked over to the troll and stole his egg. At first, he complained, but then she dropped it against the chains around his ankles. She wasn't strong enough to break the chains, but Peter was impressed that she had been able to lift the egg. The troll took over and freed himself from the metal rings, but he took care to see if Zelilia had dented his precious treasure. "You can go now," Zelilia said, then she added, "and I don't want to see you in my father's courts." The troll nodded, and with his egg, he ran off, leaving them behind. Zelilia went over to Peter and patted the Pegasus' head. At least this time they found the son of the sky. Once Peter's Pegasus recovered enough to fly back to the tree, they took off. Peter used the wind to fly him and Zelilia back. He didn't want to add any load to his Pegasus while she still felt weak. When they caught sight of the tree, Peter rushed over. He was ready to heal the tree and see if the other pixies made it back. As they landed though, they found King Atmos with some knights, rounding up the lost boys. King Atmos turned to Peter and Zelilia. His face was stern as he said to Zelilia, "How did I guess this is where you went?"